Our job as educators and as priests, really, is not to bring God to people, or even to bring people to God. God's already there, and the people are already there. Our job, our way of living out an educational vocation is to ask the right questions and to help young people ask those questions. So we welcome diversity because we're not afraid of questions and we're confident in the answer. That a person of goodwill and honest integrity and genuine intelligence asking the right questions will end up where he or she needs to be.
One of the hallmarks of what we call the spirit of Georgetown is to commit ourselves to a community in diversity. So there's a paradox there, but it's not a conflict. You can have a community founded by some central principles, a common mission, which admits of some diversity. We have student associations of young men and women of the Buddhist and Hindu traditions, of the Sikh tradition, of the Latter-day Saint or Mormon tradition. This place is alive with questions of religion and religiosity. And frankly, my job is so much fun and interesting and engaging because I'm entrusted to care for all these good people asking great questions. Good interreligious dialogue must engage the mind and the heart and the hands. Real interreligious dialogue must be engage the intellect. We must think through questions and engage in serious dialogue, and dialogue that will deal with real differences, not just common ground. Because I think what we find too often is students want to immediately go to the common ground, which is a good thing. Ultimately, though, the conversation has to go deeper. And it goes deeper by engaging in differences. And there are differences among the faith traditions. And those conversations are the harder conversations to have. But as I found it, as a priest and as a teacher, as a professor here, I found that engaging other religious traditions has actually enlivened and deepened my own faith. By hearing a Muslim or Jew speak of who their God is, I come to understand my God a little differently, the God that I find in the Jewish scriptures and in the Gospels.
In the old days, it used to be a long procession from home through the town and into the church. Well, to mark the specialness of this night, the uniqueness of this night, we shall process up to Gaston Hall from Dahlgren Chapel, our spiritual home.
One of the things that I like about this picture is it kind of expresses both the kind of spiritual feeding and real concrete human feeding. So Jesus has just multiplied the loaves and fishes and is sharing them with other people. And of course the background is this is the man that also wants to give people spiritual healing, spiritual food, his own life. And as we look at the painting, we see that here's the bread, fish, and we see it being shared by other people. So you have this sense of all these little communities being formed by people that are sharing bread. And as I look at this, I imagine there's smiles on the people that are sharing the bread. Like, this guy here, as he shares it with others, there's a joy that happens. And I hope that when students kind of experience this themselves, experiencing what it means to be generous with others, they'll have that same kind of joy, the sense of, this is great. We're here this together. We are enjoying one another. And when students come here on Thursdays, I'm hoping that this is what they experience, this kind of spiritual and material nourishment, but something that leads them to form communities with their classmates and peers.
I try to take a picture with the class. So just smile for a second. She's going to take a picture with all of us. Because my parents at some point, that's how she asked me, like, what do I do? Okay. You're ready. Get your best smile on it, okay? 1, 2, 3. Great. Okay.
So every student has one of these clickers with a little A, B, C, D, and E. And during the course of the lecture, I ask questions. So they can be opinion questions, or I can ask a question. We all read Samuel Huntington last week. Does Huntington claim A, B, C, D, or E? And then they click in. And then immediately I can show the responses, and we can then talk about them. And I actually find it most helpful when students get things wrong. People were surprised when I came to Georgetown because I asked, before I got here, could I introduce these clickers into the classroom, which now are all over the place. And so when I asked about this, people said, well, Jesuits are supposed to be kind of old school. And I said, well, but I want to engage students, and I think this is a way of engaging students. And so let's try this as a way that gets them constantly, always involved. And so it allows me to ask questions of them, they can respond throughout the lecture. And so in a class of 200, everyone is participating, rather than just the 3 or 5 or 12 that raise their hands. Everybody, several times during the lecture, has to weigh in on something. I get their responses, I can then ask people, why did they say that? So this active engagement and ultimately the shared responsibility for the learning endeavor is something that we Jesuits really prize. Both because I think people learn better that way, but because we learn too. And we become better at what we do as educators and ultimately as human beings and as Jesuits when we hear from others.
We live in Wolfington Hall, and every day I walk from Wolfington Hall to the ICC. And it's very interesting because the path brings me past the Jesuit cemetery by ICC every day. And most days I do find myself, as I walk past the cemetery, thinking about the guys who are buried there, some of whom I know. In fact, sometimes I'll stop in the nice weather and make a visit to guys whom I knew well and who had a significant impact on me. People like Tim Healy and Royden Davis and Tom King. But I also look at the empty section. There's about 50 spots left, and I'm hoping one of them will be mine. Not too soon, but eventually. But I do think of that, moving from Wolfington Hall past the cemetery to my office, of what does our presence here mean as a group and for me individually. And what difference does it make that we're here? And for me, the way I explain it to myself is we are meant to embody in a particular way the tradition that animates and gives life to Georgetown and has, for 200 years. We're not the only ones who do that, but we are asked to do it in a particular and in a unique way. In many ways, we are the tenders of the fire. Not the only ones, but in a particular way, that responsibility falls to us because of our training, because of the lives that we've lived, because of the history that we've inherited from Ignatius and so many centuries of Jesuits. We have a special responsibility to safeguard and embody and articulate what Georgetown is about.